Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital desk. We are a couple of weeks away from November 7th. That is Election Day in the state of Ohio. There are only two ballot issues this time around that the entire state is voting on. One is abortion rights. The other is legalizing recreational marijuana. We're going to stick to abortion rights here today for both sides to make sure we're balanced. We're going to hear from a pediatrician who supports issue one, and then a little bit later, about 2:10 today, we're going to hear from Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, who has already voted against issue one, taking advantage of early voting. I want to read just some of the parameters that if you vote yes on issue one, this is what it's going to state on your ballot. And I want to make sure that you hear it from what's on the ballot. I really hope that people go to cleveland19.com and read this paragraph, these set of parameters for themselves to truly understand what issue one is before stepping into the ballot box. If you approve issue one, it will establish in the Constitution in the state of Ohio an individual's rights to one's own reproductive medical treatment, including but not limited to abortion. It creates protections for any person that or entity that assists a person with receiving reproductive medical treatment, including but not limited to abortion. It would prohibit the state from directly or indirectly burdening, penalizing, or prohibiting abortion before an unborn child is determined to be viable unless the state demonstrates that it is using less restrictive means. Next, it would grant a pregnant woman's treating physician the authority to determine on a case-by-case basis whether an unborn child is viable. Next, only allow the state to prohibit an abortion after after an unborn child is determined by a pregnant woman's treating physician to be viable, and only if the physician does not consider the abortion necessary to protect the pregnant woman's life or health. Lastly, and always allow an unborn child to be aborted at any stage of pregnancy, regardless of viability, if, in the treating physician's determination, the abortion is necessary to protect the pregnant woman's life or death. Again, it is all very lengthy and complicated. That's why I want you to go to Cleveland 19. I want you to do your homework, read all of that thoroughly so that you understand the issue. Again, we're going to be talking this afternoon on both the pro-issue one and the anti-issue one side. First, we're going to welcome in Dr. Arthur Lavin. He is recently retired after 40 years of being a pediatrician in Northeast Ohio. Dr. Lavin, thank you very much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate your interest in this important issue.
It is an important issue. Let me give you the floor here without getting too into the weeds. Explain to me, why, as a pediatrician, why are you supporting issue one?
I appreciate the question. It's an important question for every citizen of Ohio. I, a doctor, am supporting issue one because I feel like it is at the very heart of being a doctor. It's really at the heart of being a person, that you would be allowed to talk to your doctor about your healthcare decisions without people who've been elected to powerful positions interfering with your decision. In this case, voting yes for issue one enshrines your reproductive freedoms into Ohio's Constitution, a place where basic rights like that, important rights like that, belong. And so I'm very pleased to get a chance to share this message with your viewers today.
It is a complicated, controversial issue. We all understand that. People are passionate on both sides of the issue. When we hear later from Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, his issue with this is going to be that this is too broad. There is no longer a definition that we used to have in the state of Ohio, that it was 21 weeks and 6 days, that there could be an abortion performed at 21 weeks, before 21 weeks and 6 days. Currently, the Ohio State Legislature passed a law that said, no, now it should be 6 weeks. That is being debated in the Ohio Supreme Court. So it's kind of up in the air, and at the current time, because that is being debated by the Ohio Supreme Court, it goes back to the 21 weeks and 6 days. With the governor's argument that within this language, There does not appear to be any kind of time limit. How do you respond to that?
Well, I just want to be sure people know that the difference between someone claiming someone else is an extremist and a policy that actually is extreme. And the difference here is that we have on the books in a state of Ohio, and the governor knows this because he signed it into law, one of the most extreme bans on abortion in the country. It's similar to the one in Florida, which everyone's very upset about. But you won't hear our opponents talking much about this law that they put into law. Is not in effect now only because our side has put a stay on it. Should issue one fail, and we talk about this being a complex thing filled with passions and such as I think you've noted in your opening remarks, but the issue actually is quite simple. The question is, will we protect every citizen of Ohio, enshrine the right to reproductive freedom, not just to abortion, but to get miscarriage care? 1 million women and girls experience miscarriage in the United States every year, and many of them unfortunately suffer complications that doctors like me are asked to help save your life from. And the current law as it stands, if it's allowed to stand, if issue one doesn't pass, the extreme 6-week ban will come into play. And we had that law in effect in Ohio from June 24th, when Dobbs came down, until the decision was stayed. And during that time, doctors saw so many interferences with our basic ability to help people who need our care that 4,000 doctors rose up in Ohio. We've never seen doctors like myself and my 4,000 colleagues gathered together to warn the state that we have seen in the period in which the current law was put into effect, people get hurt. We even are famous around the world for the state that chased a 10-year-old girl out of the state rather than care for her. So these are not allegations. These are actual experiences, very simple to share with your viewers. This is actually happening. On the other side, we don't have any actual experiences of harm from this protection of freedom to talk about. We have questions that are raised to scare people, which I guess is something you do in Halloween, try to scare people, but they don't run on defending the 6-week ban, which is the law that they worked so hard to put into effect and would go into effect unless we vote yes on issue one. So that's one point. The second point is you asked about this 6 and 22 issue. So there's a little bit of gamesmanship here. The other side would like to say that the law in Ohio really permits abortion up to 22 weeks. But we all know that before issue one was presented to the voters for consideration, everyone who ran the state government in Ohio was working as hard as they could to keep the 6-week ban in place and in force. Otherwise, why would they chase this 10-year-old out of the state if they believe that you could have up to 22 weeks? So we know it's not an allegation. We're not raising to the voters any question about what might happen. We know what will happen because it has happened. But on the other side, these scare stories haven't happened. They're not going to happen. I think you can trust your doctors to tell you when medical care is appropriate. And most importantly, even more than trust in us, is the trust in your own ability to make your judgments with your doctor and with your family.
And Doctor, we're speaking with Dr. Arthur Lavin, a 40-year pediatrician now retired in Northeast Ohio. Doctor, when we read through what would end up going into the Ohio Constitution, it talks a lot about the treating physician's determination of viability. I'm assuming, since you are pro issue one, since you are a physician, you think you have a better determination on when a fetus is viable, as opposed to someone sitting at a desk down in Columbus in our state legislature.
Well, I have to tell you, if I had appendicitis, I would much rather my doctor arrange for it to be cared for than someone who's elected to the state legislature or governor's mansion. And it's not that much different here. Yeah, the other side talks quite a lot about this question of who gets to decide when viability occurs. But here's a little secret that isn't so secret, I think. It turns out that in medical care, situations and details really matter. So a situation where someone's at 21 weeks or 22 weeks or 23 weeks, that number doesn't matter as much as a conversation with all the facts of the specifics of this situation for this mother, this child, and the mother's family. When the other side tries to impose a number on it, then we're taking away the conversation. We're saying, you're not allowed to talk to your doctor anymore. You're not allowed to hear what your doctor thinks. The governor is going to say what you need to do. And I don't think most voters in Ohio want to live in a state where the governor tells you what to do with your doctor instead of you and your doctor having a conversation together. This bill in no way imposes anything on the citizens of Ohio. It opens the door to families having control over their children's and their own fates by being allowed to talk to the doctor without the politicians imposing what they think is best.
Dr. Lavin, I'm going to afford the same opportunity to Governor DeWine here in just about 10, 15 minutes. You get the final word here. People are voting already. They may have already voted. People may be voting early in the coming weeks. And then you have your traditionalists who will wait until November 7th. I'm going to give you the final word here as people are considering how they're going to vote on issue 1.
Well, I joined the governor actually in being very proud who have voted already. And I am with Governor DeWine in really rejecting extremism. But when you walk into the booth, and if you go to your website or readtheamendment.com where the full amendment's written out, it's not that complicated to read, I would say. Keep in mind that the extremism lies with those who would like to strip your ability to have access to contraception, adequate care when you have a miscarriage, access to the greatest technology we have in Ohio at our great medical centers for fertility treatments, and abortions when necessary, but only up to the time of viability unless some very extreme situation occurs that threatens the life or well-being of those involved later. So that is what this does. That is not extreme. What's extreme is denying people access to those things. And we know it's extreme because we saw what life was like in Ohio when we didn't have this protection, and we see what's happening in states around the country that won't have the protection of this amendment. November 7th, between now and November 7th, is your chance, Ohio, to make sure you and the people you love can get the medical care they need.
Dr. Arthur Lavin, we certainly appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us, giving us your perspective on issue 1. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Take care. Again, we are interested in balance here at Cleveland 19, fair on both sides. That's why in just about 10 minutes, we will come back to you live with the governor, a one-on-one interview on why he opposes issue 1 to counter what we've just heard from Dr. Lavin. If we have any other breaking news, it'll be here on our digital platforms. Otherwise, we have 3.5 hours of news starting at 3 o'clock on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News.